So the panic this morning, and I'm doing this on Sunday morning, by the way. So this could have escalated even more by the time this video comes out. But the panic by the hardline Brexiteers this morning is absolutely palpable because they are terrified that in secret that the government is talking with the EU about a Swiss style deal with the EU. Now, why are they in such a panic about this? Because I thought a Swiss style deal was something that the Brexiteers wanted. But of course, you have to remember that's the Brexiteers of like 2016, maybe 2017. Um, they've they've long since abandoned any sort of reason since then. And one of the things we've always said is if you do any type of deal with the EU and you see the British public gets to see, well, actually, a Swiss style deal is really good. Why shouldn't we be pursuing closer ties with Europe instead of, making them with the rest of the world? Well, then, of course, the public starts to realize, well, maybe we should be in this EU single market and the customs union, and then eventually we're back in the EU. It's always the same path. That was always what was going to happen. It was just a matter of time for how long these sort of blocks fall into place, but eventually that would always be our path back. And this does seem to be the case. And the hard Brexiteers are now in an absolute panic because they're worried that Sunak and Hunt are in secret discussions to do a Swiss style deal. And this will have them in an absolute panic. And one of the things I have said is that Rishi Sunak's entire government is a house of cards built on quicksand on an earthquake fault line. So if this comes to pass, if this Swiss style deal, if there's any truth to these rumors and this comes to true, then what on earth are these hardline Brexiteers going to do? Oh boy. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Could this get interesting very quickly if this turns out to be true? But I do hope it's true, to say less, because, hey, we should be pursuing close relations with the EU. Like I say, we are a European country and we should be part of the EU. So let's go diving into this because, oh boy, yeah, this is fun. So let's go diving into this then, shall we? But before we do that, please do remember to like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, there are links down below to my Patreon page, my one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, the link to join the Pony Club as well down below, which also helps support the channel. And like I say, thank you everyone else who does support the channel. So over we go today to The Guardian to cover this. The title of Hardline Brexiteer Voices Fears over the reports of a Swiss-style EU deal. A backlash is brewing among hardline Brexiteers after reports have emerged that a senior UK government figures want the country to adopt a Swiss-style agreement with the European Union. Steve Barclay, the UK Health Secretary, has rubbished the suggestion that is already sent jitters through leading Conservatives on the European Research Group. He has insisted the government wants to, quote, maximise the opportunities of leaving the EU, and added that as a former Brexit secretary, he had, quote, worked hard to maximise the freedoms of independence. He didn't work very hard at all. Let's say that right now. He can't even say what those freedoms and that those are. There were none. There have been no positive features for leaving the European Union for the UK. So, back to it. It comes amid a renewed focus on the effects of Brexit. Given that the UK is the only G7 country still lagging behind the pre-pandemic growth levels, and a suggestion by the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, that removing trade barriers would boost growth. So you can see the pure panic that is going to erupt in the next couple of days. Ooh, ooh, oh, it gets me. Oh, it gets me juices flowing. I'll tell you that now, readers. Ooh. So let's continue. The Sunday Times reported that senior government figures were effectively revisiting a Brexit trading agreement offered by the EU last year, which would get rid of 80% of the checks between Great Britain and Northern Ireland and open up access to the single market. But this would require the UK to pledge alignment and at least temporarily on food and agricultural standards. Doing so would be anathema to the champions of a hard Brexit, including Boris Johnson's former chief negotiator, Lord Frost, as well as the members of the hardline ERG. They see that any alignment as a subjugation of control to Brussels. And even though ministers, including Michael Gove, have reportedly in the past declared the UK would keep food and farming standards equal or higher to those in the EU, any formal deal will be seen as a part reversal of Frost's trade deal. The EU's Brexit negotiator, Markus Solveig, offered a Swiss-style trade agreement last June, but it was rejected by Frost. The move was reportedly being considered by some in government, particularly while Rishi Sunak seeks to avoid a trade war with the EU and strike a deal on the Northern Ireland Protocol. Barclay told Sky News, "I do not recognise this story at all." He said that he did not support a Swiss-style relationship with the EU when it was first touted, and I want to maximise the opportunity that Brexit offers, he added. Simon Clarke, the former Levelling Up secretary, had also hoped and believed that the Swiss-style deal isn't something under consideration. And while Frost tweeted that if the claims were correct, he hoped the government, quote, thinks better of these plans fast. Ooh, threats already. Ooh. I'll tell you what, if these do turn out to be true, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, this is going to be interesting, because the idea, as we've been telling you for so long, the idea that Brexit is done is completely false. It has never been, quote, done. And even in the Conservative Party, the original fault line of Brexit, of those who like regulations to those who want to get rid of them completely, mainly the hardcore Brexiteers, is still very much there. This whole EU revocation bill is part of that. So, oh boy, are we going to see sparks fly on this one? The report, as it continues, could be the result of briefings designing to test how far the ERG would resist a changing economic environment the UK has found itself in 2 years since Frost's trade deal was struck. Jonathan Athworth, Labour's Shadow Work and Pension Secretary, told Sky News, said, "We are not proposing to return to the single market or customs union or anything like that, but we do want to negotiate a bespoke deal for the UK so our businesses can export and so that we can get those agreements on agriculture so we can work together on security issues." Now, I've said I've got no problem currently with Labour doing this. I think Labour going and pursuing a Swiss-style deal is just as favourable in a direction that we want to go as well, because eventually you just go, well, why aren't we full members? If we are getting such a benefit of this Swiss-style deal, why not just pursue full membership? So this is generally a good direction to be going in. So I cannot stress, even if you want full membership, and sort of what you've heard, Jonathan Asquith there for Labour say that, do not be disheartened, because this is a step and going in the right direction that we want to be going in if we want to sort of rejoin the EU fully. So back to it. So after Hunt's autumn statement on Tuesday, Tony Darker, the head of the Confederation of British Industry, also told BBC Sunday with Lorna Koonsberg that there was, quote, nothing there that tells us the economy is going to avoid a further descale of lower productivity or lower growth. And the so-called sanitary and phytosanitary deal would involve the UK harmonising its laws with the EU. The EU-Swiss agreement removes all documentary and identity checks and most physical checks, as well as most veterinary certificates. So all the problems at the border almost solved overnight potentially with one deal. It won't be completely, free flowing, but most of them will be solved. So this is really a step in the right direction. And if this is being touted, as was said earlier, a sort of signal flare to see how hard like the hardline ERG would resist, given the change in economic climate and the fact that we've been in their quote oven ready Brexit deal now for 2 years and it still has not borne any fruit. It's an interesting signal fire to be putting up, certainly from Sunak, but we've already saw there from Frost. Yeah, rethink those plans fast. Yeah, that's a threat. That is a very, very clear threat coming from the Brexiteers. So, like I say, if this does turn out to be true, oh boy, that would be huge. Anyway, back to it. So last June, Target said that the EU would remove 80% of the checks on food, including controls of movement, beef, minced poultry, and products from GB to Northern Ireland. It would also remove the need for pet passports, which has been widely criticised in the Northern Ireland and London. And an EU UK veterinary agreement has been advocated by the NIP Alliance, NP Stephen Farry, and by the party's veto Naomi Long, the SDLP leader. Colin Eastwood has urged the UK government to sign a Swiss-style agreement with the EU, and Darren Kerry, the Sinn Féin's Brexiteer spokesperson and even executive minister, suggested the UK should sign up to a Swiss-style agreement. So, we are moving in the right direction. I cannot stress, this is a move in the right direction. It's just what happens next, because ultimately, we've got to see, does the ERG have their strength still? Remember, Liz Truss was their candidate to put forward their wacky, crazy fantasy ideas, and it failed spectacularly. So do they actually still have, and can they still command that their Brexit ideas are the right, true, and correct ones? Could Rishi Sunak be put into a situation where he is so desperate, maybe he has to do a referendum, maybe he has to go to a general election? Honestly, this could bring down his government if this turns out to be true. I cannot stress how important this is. If this turns out to be true, this is going to send shockwaves, absolute shockwaves through Westminster. And as I've said, that bottom fault line could be the very thing that tumbles down Rishi Sunak's government very, very quickly. So certainly something we're going to be keeping a lot of eyes on this. That is for sure. So as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, we'll see you all next time.